Hey, Jordan, how's it going?
Hey, Rob. What's up?
This is exciting, right? Being on location. It's nice to get out of the office. We are talking to, for the podcast this week, talking to a Twitch streamer, LucidFoxx. So it's just really cool to be here at Langley in the Twitch division to see where all the magic happens. I know Lucid's not quite finished with his stream yet, but just looking around, it's incredible. Seeing all the personalities. I see Liv over there. She's doing her stream in her cubicle there. There's, of course, Hassan. It's really amazing to be here behind the scenes and see all the Twitch personalities that we know and love doing what they do best. It's really incredible. I'm usually seeing it, from the other end. I'm usually seeing it from the computer perspective. So it's really cool to be here and see how the magic happens.
Yeah, I was just walking down the hall. I went to get some water and saw the SOS Cuba hashtag force over in the corner, and the amazing work they've been doing. I thought that was so cool, and it really just shows the most bang for your buck with your tax dollars. You're getting all of these digital assets shaping the minds of Americans, and it's all happening right here. So just to see where the sausage is made is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, I have been doing my own Twitch streaming. I haven't, been invited yet to join the official community here. I'm hoping to eventually be able to take my place. Of course, we've had conversations. I have other stuff going
just got
on.
Lost in the mail or something.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get there eventually. Eventually, I'll get invited into this circle. But in the meantime, though, it's just really impressive to see all these leftist Twitch personalities all in the same place, doing what they do best, engaging their communities, and ultimately seeding them with State Department propaganda, which is what it's all about. Really magical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important that they do this because there's no way the left could just cannibalize itself organically.
Exactly. It's really important. It's really vital work. Anyway, I think Lucid's going to be finished pretty soon, so we can get to our talk with him soon. In the meantime, did you want to go head down to the cafeteria? Because I told Lance from the Surf so we could go grab lunch in the cafeteria. You down?
Let's go. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Okay. Hello and welcome, everyone. It's the Insurgents, episode 72. You got Rob Rousseau here.
What's going on, Rob?
Along with Jordan Uhl is also there.
How
Not
are
much is going on. I'm good. I'm actually taking a little break. I'm in vacation mode right now.
Vacation
I've been
mindset.
Spending time. Yeah, I'm still in vacation mindset. I woke up this morning at a beautiful sort of lakeside scene where I've been spending some time with my family. Very nice. And then I drove down to my basement to toil away in the content mines for a couple of days, and I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled to be here, doing my Twitch stream and the podcast. Absolutely love it. So that's what I'm up to right now.
When you love your work, when you love your job, you're never working a day in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, it's tremendous. How is it going with you? How have you been doing?
Fine. I think it's been a couple weeks since we've done this. I realized, I went to New York for a couple days, which was nice. Saw some of our friends. That was a nice getaway. Had some great New York City bagels, baby. That was good. That's it.
Inferior to Montreal bagels, but I'm sure they're very good.
Is Montreal really a bagel city?
Oh yeah, that's what one of the main things we're known for. Montreal
I thought
bagels.
It was racism.
It's maybe a little bit rich coming from
no, we're good here.
The US of A. But very good bagels, definitely. But I'm sure yours were good too.
Yeah, they were good. That was I can't remember what else I did. I mean, we had the fundraiser, went to New York. Yeah, just kind of chilling, playing Fortnite, hanging out. I was kind of considering maybe a late summer vacation or trip, and now I don't feel confident making those plans because of the Delta variant. So
yeah,
feeling okay.
You missed that like 6-week window where we could pretend that the pandemic was over.
Yeah, dude. You know what sucks? I was like, 2020 was supposed to be, I don't know if I've talked about this. 2020 was supposed to be my year, the year of me.
Yeah.
So, after college, I like worked and took on like extra work on the side to make ends meet, and then got like, an okay job, but then like started to go into grad school at night. So for 3.5 years, I was in grad school, and then 2020 comes, and I just get out of grad school at the end of 2019. It's like 2020, I'm going to travel. I'm going to go see the world. I'm going to go hike all these different places. It's going to be great. And obviously life has other plans. And here we are halfway through 2021. And yep, same situation.
Yeah. We're looking down the barrel at a whole other year of this. And we talked a little bit about this actually with our guest, LucidFoxx. Just about how it seems like as a result of the sort of fear-mongering and the disinformation that has been propagated on right-wing media, it's now looking like the pandemic may very well kind of get back to levels that we thought we were surpassed. And now you can see people on the right in both the political sphere and the media sphere start to kind of freak out about this and are starting now to try and push people to get the vaccine. It's a kind of interesting phenomenon. We talked about this with LucidFoxx. He's going to come on the show in just a few minutes. I wanted to ask you though, because you said I heard you mention that you were around. There was that shooting outside of the Washington Nationals game a few days ago, which was really, really like terrifying footage to kind of see this at a professional baseball game and hear the shots, and you see the players react, and you saw like players letting people into the dugout, people that were running around or escaping from this possible shooting. No one knew what was happening. It seemed really, really terrifying. And you said that you experienced a bit of the aftermath of that. What happened with that?
Yeah, I was downtown for dinner that night and was leaving right after the shooting. And it's really remarkable how. Hold on a second.
I can hear the cat.
You can hear that totally stupid mental. Cat. Jesus Christ.
Jordan's obviously not caring for the cat properly.
All right, put her in the bathroom. I'm gonna start that again. She's she won't shut up. And I can't put her in the bedroom because my partner's about to stream. So she's getting set up in there.
That's what you got, a dual setup going on now.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hype house.
It is. So Saturday night I'm downtown for dinner, and a friend sends me a clip of the shooting and the aftermath of people evacuating, knowing that I'm down there. And just says, hey, as a heads up, and this is about when we're leaving the restaurant. So we get to the train, and we're taking the metro home, and it is, packed with Nationals fans. And these are people who are just joking, laughing, whatever. You would, if you had no contextual awareness, you would think the game ended under normal circumstances, and everyone's just kind of hanging out on the train. So what stood out to me was this is a country where we're so desensitized to mass shootings that people who just 30 minutes before survived one it doesn't even register for them.
Yeah, it's not like it doesn't register in the news cycle. It literally doesn't register with the actual people physically that are being like affected by it.
Unbelievable. And then I saw that clip, and you and I were talking about earlier, the clip of that 8-year-old girl who was interviewed by the local news, and they're like, what did you think? And her response was, oh, well, this is my second shooting, so I was okay. And it's just like 8 years old, and this is her second shooting she survived. Yeah. What's it going to take for people to care? Because Sandy Hook obviously wasn't enough. Like Parkland obviously wasn't enough. Aurora, Pulse, all this stuff was never enough. So what's it going to take for them to actually act on gun control?
Yeah, I mean, it's traditionally, I don't believe, the sign of a super healthy society when you have like 7-8-year-olds being like, oh, this is my second shooting. It's actually not that big of a deal.
Right.
Just seeing some of the really horrific scenes from like daycares and elementary schools where you have teachers like in educating young kids and trying to go through these drills and stuff about shooting, doing little poems about how to avoid the mass shooting. It's so fucking disturbing. I don't know the first thing about how this gets resolved. I mean, that's the thing. It's I try and avoid the sort of comparisons about the US and Canada. And I always try to remind people that Canada, when it comes to America, is plagued by a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same kind of like inequality, the same kind of racism, the same kind of genocidal history, the same genocidal foreign policy. This is one area, though, where there is this kind of stark difference, this level of gun violence, and the sort of the way it's been normalized. It's incredibly disturbing, and I don't know the first thing about how you begin to confront that problem. I mean, you mentioned Sandy Hook. That to me should really be the moment where, if anything was ever going to happen, in terms of just trying to do some kind of basic. I don't think the government should go house to house and start confiscating people's weapons or any of that stuff. I think that would be pretty much futile. There's so many millions of guns in the United States that it wouldn't make a lot of sense. It would primarily target, Black and brown communities and marginalized people, as we all know. I don't know what the solution is, though, because to me, if that moment comes when you have, small children being killed in a shooting like that, so horrifically, so tragically, and just nothing happens, not even a cursory, a small gesture to kind of indicate that something is going to go down to like reduce the ability of people to get their hands on deadly weapons, people that intend to use them in this terrible way. When that moment came and passed and nothing happened, it just felt like, it's just not going to happen in America. And to a certain extent, Americans have just decided that that's part of what it is to live in that society, is just to constantly have that threat. And just that's part of what it is now in 2021 to live in America. And it's a very frightening thought. It's very, very disturbing. I don't know the first thing about what you would do to resolve that.
That's the American way. It's no matter how disastrous or cancerous or violent an industry, if someone out there stands to make money, lobbyists will be out there pressuring Congress to block any action on it. And we're just going to have to live with gun violence, it seems, forever. We're just going to, shootings are going to be a part of American society. And that's where we're heading towards coronavirus. It's just because we can't really do anything, because it's a partisan culture war. We can't do anything about it. We're just going to have to live with it. We're going to have to live with it like we live with the flu, even though it's more dangerous, more transferable, more infectious, and more lethal. And that's where we're eventually going to be with climate change. Can't do anything on climate change because people can make money on hazardous processes. So you're just going to have to live with extreme weather events for the rest, and that's just going to be called weather. So that's it. That's the future for us.
Pretty grim stuff, Jordan. Sometimes I try to view the good things in America. I try to, hold on to the things. There's many Americans that I like a lot. Many of my friends are American. Sometimes it's hard to take a look at some of this stuff and feel a whole lot of hope that America's ever going to get its act together. Unfortunately. I don't know what to do about America. It's a pretty messed up country you got down there. What can I say?
I'd say.
Let's bring on Twitch streamer LucidFoxx. We had a really enjoyable conversation with Lucid. I really enjoy checking out his stream.
He's good. He's really good.
Yeah, he is good. He's going to be joining the program right after this.
Now we're joined by LucidFoxx, who you might know from Twitch, who has a regular stream, and I would say way better than Rob's stream. So if you're on the fence, I'd say go watch Lucid's. So Lucid, thank you for joining.
That in the intro. No problem, though.
Hey, listen.
It is a very good stream. It is.
It's a great stream.
Yeah. We don't need to get into the rankings and who's better than who. I mean,
we can't. We've got time. We just started. We've got an hour. Let's do it. Sure.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I think we were going to talk about other things, but we can talk about like how we're all better than you, Rob. That's solid podcast material.
Yeah, common talking point that comes up on here pretty often.
Sure.
But Lucid, we start these conversations off with a fastball. We don't, this isn't kind of your Larry King style interview. We're here to ask the tough questions. So first question we ask everybody, just to get a lay of the land: are you a gamer?
Yeah, no, of course. I'm literally playing Death's Door right now.
Oh, let's go.
Like right at this moment?
Well, you know, who knows? No, I've been playing Death's Door is like this little Dark Souls like isometric style game. Been playing that for the past couple days. Your little crow that's just trying to, you know, be a reaper.
Nice. What is New World? I just saw this out of nowhere take over the gaming categories on Twitch. What is it?
It's Amazon's attempt at an MMO. It's burning out 3090s right now because it has poor memory optimization. And
interesting.
Yeah, and it is. It's not my flavor of MMO for sure. It might strike for some people, and obviously, as we kind of know, first of all, Twitch belongs to Amazon, so it would make sense that they would be putting quite a bit of marketing money into having streamers play it. So I'll be interested to see what happens a couple of months out to see if people are still as interested as they are now.
No one's reached out to me about this. I mean, I am a Twitch influencer, verified, partnered Twitch account. Kind of weird that I haven't been contacted about this. I mean, maybe I'm just on the waiting list or whatever. It's probably
sure. Oh no! They're gonna get to you real soon. Don't worry, Rob.
Tomorrow. It's probably coming tomorrow. Yeah.
I was just talking to Jeffy Bezos, Bezos I call him, and you know, he said, boss. Rob, that guy, I got to get him on the New World.
Yeah, and I would appreciate that.
That all makes sense, though, because I had never heard of this game, and then yesterday I opened Twitch, and it was one of the most watched categories, and I thought there was... And also, none of the stream titles disclosed that it was an ad, so it must have been some sort of...
put... just to kind of paint a picture for you, they've put ad money into this, or marketing money into this game for years now. I mean, they were... when TwitchCon still existed, in the before times, they were paying people's whole trips, hotel stays, everything to kind of like, you know, give them a thank you for just being influencers for New World. So again, none of that's going to affect anyone's opinion whatsoever of the video game they're going to be playing. It's going to be totally fine.
Yeah, this is. I've been saying this for years. We want more integrity in video game journalism. That's it.
Yeah,
thank you. You're always.
If only there was a cause I can get behind.
This. Yeah.
Right.
Message boards that they seem a little much for
me
sometimes.
My buddy Ian and I talk about this constantly.
Yeah, of course. You're always saying this. Are you playing anything interesting new, Jordan?
No, just Fortnite. The new Magic set came out. Actually, a little bit. I dabble. Have you played? Okay. No, yeah, you know, I love that game, and I think Rob is now hooked. Lucid, I saw after the fundraiser. I saw you. You were playing later in the day.
Yeah. Maybe.
I was playing ironically just so I could talk about how bad it is.
It's okay to think it's fun. It's a fun game. There's
It is. I was explaining this to my community. If it didn't have building in it, I feel like I'd spend infinitely more time in
I'm
Fortnite.
kind of in the same boat.
You know, like if it was just a cartoonish shooter, then that'd be one thing.
It got way more fun once I learned how to build. Like last year, I kind of with the pandemic, I was playing with guys who were really good, and they all knew how to build. And I was like, okay, fuck, I want to keep playing with these guys because we win, but I don't want to be dead weight. So I just started watching YouTube tutorials on how to build and edit and learn that way. Sure. But mostly that, and then Magic.
I'm sure you felt really good about yourself watching these YouTube tutorials about building on Fortnite.
From 12-year-olds. 33-year-old, probably the most miserable state of my life, having some 12-year-old on YouTube tell me how to edit a brick wall.
3 a.m.
Right. How's COVID been for you? I don't know, man. I don't really know how to answer
fine,
that.
I guess. I'm doing okay. I'm holding up okay. Yeah.
And here I am. 34 and in pretty much the same position.
Sure.
Wonderful.
I get that.
Yeah. No, but so you mentioned like our boss, Jeff Bezos. I mean, we're all on Twitch. I mean, Lucid and I are, of course, as I mentioned earlier, verified partner streamers. Jordan, not quite there yet, which is, you know, eventually he's going to get there.
Matter of time. Yeah.
I don't stream. Last night, my partner was like, "Oh, you should stream Fortnite tonight." And I'm just kind of, I don't want to. I've got my thing on TYT, and that's fine.
That's a good impulse that you've got. Yeah, just don't. Yeah.
I don't have this. But as we saw with our boss, Jeff Bezos, yesterday, his really remarkable historic suborbital flight, pretty impressive stuff, amazing stuff. All of humanity was united in watching this and cheering for a certain outcome. to happen. We were all united in this. It was
we all had different reasons for watching. I like to think, but everybody was interested. Sure.
I do find it funny though that like they're making such a big deal about this with both Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos, these suborbital,
right?
Yeah. Like, we're just flying into space. It's like you're not flying into space. Let's
Meanwhile,
be clear about this.
Yuri Gagarin somewhere, just like, hey, what did I do? You know, what's up?
Yeah, I was also suborbital yesterday. No one threw me any parades. No one asked to interview me on the news or talk about these things. We were all suborbital yesterday, but for some reason we got to celebrate Jeff Bezos for getting there.
Well, they talked about it. I saw an infograph of talk minutes, and apparently they spent about 3/4 the amount of time talking about Jeffrey Bezos and his Blue Origin launch. They spent 3/4 the amount of time as they did on climate change for all of 2020.
I did see that as well. Yeah, very, very exciting stuff. I agree.
So I like where our priorities, as a species are right now. That billionaires going to space is just a heck of a thing.
Well, it's not like we have any newsworthy like climate catastrophes happening right now that they could cover.
Could you imagine?
So. No,
like it's
kind of slow. There was a slow news week in climate world.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if there was like a single like city in China that had received like a year's worth of rainfall in like a day or something. God, that would be something.
Yeah, what if?
Yeah,
yeah,
terrifying. Just cast in like scenarios, but
I like. At the same time, I saw a headline today that fire in Oregon is so large that it has its own weather patterns. Did you see this? That's how bad this has gotten. So naturally, we need to cover Jeff Bezos catching a Skittle in his mouth.
Yeah,
at the nearly the same altitude that OK Go filmed a music video. Just to put things in perspective.
The more pressing thing for me, I think, is like post space Jeff Bezos and the clarity they kind of got from that.
Yes, of course.
He said like like most people get what's called the overview effect, right? Where you're just like, oh, this thing, we have to protect it. It's so fragile. And he's just like
the pale blue dot.
Yeah, the pale blue dot, right? And he's just like, okay, but what if we polluted space too?
Yeah,
and you're like, yeah, okay, I guess that's not that wouldn't be my first choice.
That's one
Jeff.
takeaway. Yeah, okay.
What if we made it bad up here too? Yeah, I mean, we could, man, but like, how we don't?
Rack the moon. That's what I'm saying.
But it was two incredibly grotesque things that he said in that post-press conference. Not only where he first just like suggests like, oh yeah, all this polluting machinery and all this industry, we're just gonna move that into space. Yeah, just like, no problem. We're gonna get our oil in space now. Or frack the moon, like you were saying. Just like that's this easy thing. That's this easy answer to this cataclysmic crisis we're facing down. And then also, one of those things where it's just like you really realize how these guys live in a completely other universe, because this comes across as something just so completely tone deaf, just like admitting something so grotesque. But he's like, all those Amazon workers and customers, you paid for this, and it's like, are you serious, Jeff? Are you really?
It's the power of grassroots. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's something that I think whenever I go out on Amazon.com and I float around and I'm like, I could really use a USB drive or something. I'm like, I hope that this money's going to a good cause, like letting an extremely rich person flirt with his moonshot ideas of going into suborbital space.
And you see these kind of journalists kind of desperately flailing to kind of harken back to the era of the 60s and the space race and this idea that we're coming together for this common purpose and this beautiful thing. But it's just like, and you see some of these guys trying to use that kind of rhetoric, like Branson, talking about how this is going to open up space to people from all different ethnic backgrounds and sexualities and stuff. But it's like, we're not talking, it's not like average working class people are going to be like, oh, hey, honey, you want to go on a little trip to space this week? This is this affordable thing that we can do now because of visionaries like Richard Branson. Like, no, this is like a amusement park ride for the absolute wealthiest and most privileged people in the world.
They were saying like what, somebody paid like $12 million for a spot that he just couldn't.
I just can't make it. Yeah,
couldn't make it.
Scheduling conflict.
Yeah, like, oh man, I feel like personally, if I ever spent $12 million on something, there's literally nothing. There could be a tiger defending like the door on the way out. And I'd be like, okay, well, I guess I have to murder a tiger today because I spent $12 million to do this thing.
Yeah.
And that's for them. They're just like, well, we'll reschedule. It'll be fine. Like, oh, okay, cool. Sure.
I guess one thing that's kind of funny is to see the amount of people just being like, I don't care.
and that's the thing, right? I think there was definitely there's a couple of pieces that go along with that, right? Like the space race of the 60s was also kind of predicated upon some other like coinciding narratives of the time, like we were trying to race the Soviet Union and other world powers to get to to prove that we were that American exceptionalism was not dead and that we were the best of the best. And then we kept moving the whatever that milestone was because the Soviets kept beating us at every turn. So I think there was a different atmosphere kind of surrounding that space race. But I don't think in this day and age where most people you kind of look at like the income inequality within the United States, like not to even mention like abroad in other countries. I think most people are just kind of worried about what they're going to be doing at the end of the year. If they're going to be like maintaining their job, they're going to be able to keep their house or keep paying rent. I don't think most people are predisposed with like, oh, we're going to space again, huh? Oh, that's awesome. I don't think it's a concern of the normal like working person.
Yeah, I mean, there's working class issues like strikes and we saw between the working conditions that Frito-Lay employees are dealing with and the strikes in Alabama. These are newsworthy subjects that will never get the light of day on corporate media. And I think about how this is, you mentioned it earlier, Rob, about Richard Branson's comments trying to invoke some sort of identity politics to apply some equitable veneer to what's going on, when really this is just another reminder of how concentrated the wealth is at the top. Jeff Bezos is someone who really isn't paying his fair share of taxes, and we did see a good progressive push on the left to try to use this moment to talk about that. But when you just flip on CNN and you've got a fucking Vanderbilt and Anderson Cooper talking to Bezos and Jim Sciutto firing off tweets like, excuse my mostly incurable optimism, but could 2 successful private space launches in 9 days be something all Americans rally around together, and just getting widely panned for such a ludicrous comment. Like, this is something that the Soviets did with technology far inferior to a modern cell phone in the 60s. So, like, who cares? Like, literally, right. Who cares?
There are no milestones to hit. I mean, if you're private industry, of course you're like, oh, okay, well, this is something that might separate the top 1% kind of away from some of their money. But I don't think this is something that's even looks close to achievable for the working or even the middle class or the upper middle class for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely not.
There's nothing for so even on the idea of like corporatist and investor class, I don't think they're like, oh well, finally now we can hoodwink some people out of their money. It's like, no, this is still going to be prohibitively expensive for the vast amount of people. So I don't know who this was for besides 2 billionaires that had to prove that they could go into space for a couple of minutes.
With Bezos in particular, too, it was really like the all-time like newly divorced guy move.
Yeah,
you have to admit, when he's walking away in his special little blue suit with his big hat and stuff, walking away from his special big boy space launch, is like, good job, Jeff.
I hadn't thought of that. Some guys go out and they're like, you know what? I'm going to prove her wrong. I'm going to go buy that muscle car that I always wanted. And instead, Bezos is like, I'm going to space.
Yeah.
All right.
And like, he's wholly reliant on federal funding for this as well.
Absolutely.
And even when he didn't get a grant that I think SpaceX got, Cantwell, who's his senator, or one of his senators, submitted an amendment to another bill to try to get him another $10 billion that way.
Yeah.
So like he's got allies in Congress who are going to continue siphoning money out of federal coffers. When I think the total NASA budget is something like $20 billion, right. And they're like giving him half of NASA's total budget for his little like space playground. It's just a reminder of
privatizing space, Well, and that's what I hate about like the idea of like the futurists and technocrats out there, and they're like, Well, it's a good thing that Jeff is doing this because eventually the privatization of the space industry is going to trend towards it being more affordable, and it's just going to be better for, everybody. And it's like, I don't think you understand how that works necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's something for me. It's been an evolution for me on this because I think I was someone that even like 10, 15 years ago, I really was kind of fascinated with the idea of space exploration and believing in that kind of future of mankind visiting other planets and stuff. And I really was a fan of like Carl Sagan and figures like this. I always really enjoyed and loved his series Cosmos and I mentioned the pale blue dot earlier, that kind of famous quote. I've always had a real fascination with that, but I think it's really taken this like grotesque spin, where it's just like none of these kind of lofty ideals are really there anymore, despite the fact that they might be trying to artificially graft them onto the whole endeavor. And I mean, people are trying to spin it like it's some victory of capitalism, like you're saying, when not only are these specific projects being publicly funded, but it's all based on technology that was publicly funded in the first place. And it's not some grand victory of capitalism or some evidence that like that capitalist innovation is somehow gonna rescue us. It's just really, it's the opposite. And I don't doubt also that Bezos, when he talks about industry happening in space, I mean, I don't doubt that there are many powerful people involved in these kind of circles that do believe that that's where the future of industry is and getting into asteroid mining and all this shit.
Sure.
But this is going to be for their own benefit. I mean, it's not for the benefit of the humanity. It's not something to bring humanity close together. It's for the benefit of these guys' massive egos and also the shareholders of their companies that they're going to try and profit off it. And that's all it is, So it's kind of taken a very grotesque turn from the lofty ideals that people like Carl Sagan maybe once had when it came to space exploration.
Yeah, absolutely.
But other than that, full-throated support from all three of us for everything else Jeff Bezos is doing.
Yeah,
100%. Everything else that he's working on. Yeah.
Huge fan. Other than all that stuff, I'm a big fan.
No, I thought you mentioned it earlier. The comment he made about, every Amazon employee and every Amazon customer made this happen. And then just yesterday morning, you see the story out of California where the woman who is dealing with or pregnancy and needs a lightened workload and just repeated denials from management and demanding she continue the same rigorous workload, take shorter bathroom breaks, keep her productivity levels up, and then she ends up having a fucking miscarriage.
Yeah. Disgusting.
Just really horrific, grim stuff. It just shows what a barbaric workplace Amazon is, all to benefit him and shareholders.
Right.
Yeah, so we can launch this like penis-shaped rocket into the stratosphere and feel like a big man. Very cool. Instead of the sports car, the Corvette or whatever, that's what he went with.
Yeah.
So what else we got in the news this week, though? I mean, we talked about the billionaire fake space race. I think we're all kind of undecided on that, as we were just saying. Another thing that I did want to get into that came up this week is this unrest in Cuba that's been happening. And the way that people within the United States that I think have been very interested in doing regime change in Cuba for a very, very long time immediately gleamed onto this. I know I don't want to downplay the fact that there are legitimate issues in Cuba, especially with the economy, the way the economy has been devastated in the COVID pandemic and has devastated their tourism industry. But it's also impossible to notice the very same trends that we see coming from sort of the United States, the media establishment, the intelligence community, who are trying to take these legitimate issues and try and spin it into a way to finally lead them back into this world of like capitalist development, which I think as we can look around the Caribbean, throughout Central and South America, we know what capitalist development has looked like for these nations. And I think, it's a little bit dangerous, this situation that Cuba's in as a result.
I think that's right. I've pointed out, a couple of times in my community, like, for people that are really interested in this idea of regime change in Cuba, I mean, really look no further to what we've done with Haiti. And that's kind of going to give you an idea of what would happen if we got into a full regime change operation, kind of boots on the ground with Cuba, right? Like, it would just decimate these people that we've already spent a 6 years long campaign just trying to gut as much as we can. And I never understand whenever like Cuba comes up. I never understand like the full-throated support that comes like from so many different vectors, right? Like not just like you do kind of expect it from like a lot of the conservative Cubans and just conservatives in general, but even some of the left that's kind of jumping into the conversation as if they've got some skin in the game with like, oh well, obviously self-determination, but I think it's wrong that they do X and Y. It's like, what? Why do you need to be involved in the conversation of what, like, do we not have enough going on our own shores to worry about currently? Do we not have police brutality to also focus on?
Yeah, I mean, and often these conversations come from people who I think repeat talking points about what life is like in Cuba, but haven't really done much look into what Cuban democracy actually entails.
All right.
And just take this idea that because they have a different system that's set up, that average people in Cuba just don't have any input in how their government functions, which is just not really accurate when you actually dig into, the semantics of how democracy does work in Cuba. And again, the thing that drives me crazy about this is, as you pointed out, there's been decades now of economic warfare on the part of the United States against this country that's been happened through sanctions, through this economic blockade. It's been kind of done in a way that they can have this kind of plausible deniability when it comes to medical supplies and food. But in practice, this blockade does affect Cuba's ability to import these things. And it's very, very grotesque, I think, to me, when I see people in the United States government, whether they're conservatives or whether they're people like Joe Biden, who come out and say things like, oh, we stand with the Cuban people, we support the Cuban people, while they're deliberately carrying out this policy that very, very specifically has made life as difficult as possible for poor and working class people in Cuba, for the exact reason that they then become discontented with the economic status quo. Sure. It's like I don't understand how American politicians can kind of claim to stand with the people of Cuba while they're very intentionally making their lives worse. And, I'm in Canada and Canada has a different relationship with the blockade. I think technically we oppose the blockade, but I don't think that should let the government of Canada off the hook either, because as with every other foreign policy issue, we are basically like a faithful lapdog of the United States State Department. And even if we might technically be opposed to the embargo, we're not really doing anything meaningful to ensure that the embargo was lifted.
There's no pressure actually being put on it. Yeah.
No, exactly. So I don't think Canada should be let off the hook for this.
A UN vote every, performative UN vote from every other country every year.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it. I don't see. It's very frustrating to have Americans have any kind of opinion about what should happen there because of these economic issues. That doesn't stop and start with, we need to lift the blockade. We need to lift the embargo. If you actually care about Cubans, being able to achieve better material conditions or have access to things like medical supplies, which they're struggling with right now during this pandemic, well, then you have to lift the blockade. Like that's the first, second, and third solution. Well, and a lot of Americans aren't really there yet.
That was as much laid out by, their one of their ministers when he went to the UN. I think it was a month and a half ago. Their foreign minister said, hey, there's two problems that we're facing right now, and it's medical supplies and food production supplies. And both of those are seeing, we're seeing problems getting both of those to the island right now. And we need to, see that in higher frequency. The blockade is one of the biggest reasons that we're having a problem with this. And then lo and behold, a month and a half later, there appears to be some discontent on Cuba because people want more medical supplies and food. It's like, well, yeah, I think these problems were actually raised and nothing was addressed. Nothing was done about it because we can't stop a blockade even during the midst of coronavirus.
A bright spot. So yes, there's no progress being made on ending the blockade, but there are people on the left who are actually trying to do things. And a hero of mine, Medea Benjamin and Code Pink, just raised like $500,000 to cover the cost of like 6 million syringes and doses of the vaccine to ship them to Cuba, and they're heading there now. They just did a big send off and symbolic drop today, and that's just the work of activists and organizers and small groups that would never get the type of attention that a group, a large Democratic or establishment group would get. in the press, but they did it, and to very little fanfare. So thanks to them, because that's actually going to help. And similar to what's happening in Iran during the pandemic, their inability to access medical supplies because of us. They're now buckling under the weight of the pandemic and in a much worse off situation because of us. And then people here throw up their hands like, wow, their government is crumbling. They can't take care of their citizens. We need to intervene. It's like, well, we did this.
Sure.
And the comparison to Haiti, I think, is an important point to point out as well, because I think when we see the media establishment coalesce around these things and talk about the plight of certain dissidents while ignoring the plight of other dissidents, it shows you what the priorities are for the state in the United States, right?
Absolutely.
And how there has been uprisings in Haiti against the neoliberal establishment in Haiti, the puppet government of Moise in Haiti, which culminated in his assassination a few weeks ago. There's been mass protests and uprisings in Haiti against this client government for now years, like literally 3 years of this. And this is never mentioned. This is never mentioned on the media. If you ask kind of the average people who they consume world and international news via these big media companies, they'll have no idea that this is going on. And then the moment, a couple dozen Cubans start trying to organize a protest to improve their material conditions, all of a sudden this is the number one news story on every single news channel. You have every single American politician weighing in.
Oh yeah, every ally comes out of the woodwork of just like, I was always for Cuban termination. Pitbull steps up to be, new puppet dictator. Like everybody's just super interested.
And he claimed we need to get Bezos involved.
Yeah, Cuban icon Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Cuban icon.
I just, it is always curious to me to see, how quickly it turns. And of course, because people have been kind of programmed by that anti-Cuban propaganda for generations at this point. So of course we have a different relation with them than we might with Haiti, because really our status with Haiti is just non-involvement, just kind of allowing U.S. Foreign policy and French foreign policy in other countries to kind of get involved at their whims in Haiti and ignoring what happens for the most part.
Until they elect a president that wants to raise the minimum wage by 50 cents, and at which point then they have to get in there and make sure that they're deposed as soon as possible.
Then we need to obviously do some freedoming. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I also too, because you have to kind of walk this line, and we should point out, of course there's legitimate problems that people in Cuba are experiencing. It would be foolish to suggest that Cuba is some kind of workers' utopia. No one actually thinks this. There are legitimate problems. We can debate about how much of these problems are deliberately caused by the United States, and I would say that's the predominant main cause of a lot of them. But then I think you still have people that are kind of downplaying using the evidence that there is legitimate unrest or discontent that's happening in this country, and then kind of downplay the assistance of the American intelligence community, like the CIA, in pushing these things along, which we know is in their playbook. We know this is how it happens in every single country that they try and do this kind of thing, where they enact these sanctions deliberately to make the economy as chaotic as possible and disruptive as possible. They create the exact situations where people feel the need to express this unrest, and then they of course push it along on the ground and have people on the ground trying to instigate that and trying to make it more chaotic and trying to push it even further. This playbook has been used just time and time again throughout the Caribbean, throughout Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, all over the world. And still, I think the thing I find kind of frustrating is when you see these clear signs of what is happening start to take place in Cuba, you still have people that are like, well, hey, hold on now. Let's not just claim that the CIA is responsible for everything, or let's pump the brakes on some of this conspiracy theory CIA talk.
Right.
But after a certain point, we have to be aware that this is their playbook that happens time and time again, and we have to see it when it starts happening.
My poor, sweet CIA.
Yeah, would never. Yeah.
What are you saying? Are you saying they've ever conducted things like Operation Mongoose or Condor or any of these things that might have had something to do with the sovereignty of other nations? I don't believe it.
Well, that's the thing. It's that we always have to wait. We always have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and then we wait 30 years for the documents to be declassified, and then we can denounce it afterwards once we know for sure. But when it's happening, we have to ensure that we don't get our tinfoil hats on and get too conspiratorial about the possible role of the U.S. intelligence community.
Right.
On the Haiti thing, there's those reports emerging initially. Oh, and also like Haiti, officials in Haiti asked for U.S. ground support in the country, and I think Biden initially said no, and then there was a report that came out a couple of days later that folks at the Pentagon were considering the request, and I tweeted that out because that's concerning, and knowing that they just will, they could send like contractors there or agents or whatever, and it was already established that they were going to send FBI agents, DHS, and I think one more department. Representatives from these different departments, maybe not troops themselves, but they were going to send all of these other intelligence officers down there to help with the situation. I tweeted that out and said, and pointed out how they said they were considering also the troop request, and all of these liberals were like, Biden already said no. Biden said no troops, and it's like, do you think they're just gonna fucking like? Do you think they can't change their mind, or they would just do something different? And then the very next day, Jen Psaki says it's not off the table, and they are considering sending troops down there. So it's like, in what world? And when are they finally going to wake up and realize that, like, time and time again, history has repeated itself? Like, we've shown what we're willing and capable of doing in the global South, and there's nothing that really holds us back. What I don't know. People just seem to think that somehow it's going to change now because Biden's in charge. And
Jordan, I don't know what
ludicrous.
you're talking about. I remember when Obama closed Guantanamo all those years ago.
Day
when I
one.
think about that,
promises made, promises kept.
Yeah, and when I think about that, I think to myself, if we can do that, there's nothing we can't do, right?
Well, I mean, you joke, but to Obama's credit, I mean, I've been a big critic of Obama's foreign policy. It was a disgusting, blood-soaked, horrific foreign policy. Mm-hmm. But one of the good things Obama's foreign policy did do was kind of attempt to normalize relationships with Cuba.
They did.
And start to undo some of this.
It got
to their
immediately
credit.
rolled back, but they did.
Yeah, that's to their credit, they did. And that's the kind of fucked up thing, is that Donald Trump immediately rolled back all these positive developments that they made in terms of normalizing these relations. And since taking office, I mean, Joe Biden could have reinstituted these new sort of set of protocols with regards to Cuba. Day one, he has yet to do so. There's zero daylight between the Trump's foreign policy with Cuba and with Biden's administration. Zero daylight whatsoever.
Absolutely. For all people calling him the most, progressive thing since FDR, I don't know, especially on the grounds of foreign policy, I just see, quite a few lacking like areas where he's got the ability to jump in and try to fix some things, and
he's got the concentration camps down.
Yeah. Well, no, of course, and I think that's important to remember.
On the Cuba thing specifically, I worked at the University of DC, and when that happened, one of the big pushes was establishing educational partnerships because, and this is a little bit of foreshadowing, Cuba's education system, literacy rates are great. And they have a great education system. So we established a partnership with the University of Havana Law School, like immediately. And we sent a bunch of people down there, and it was going to be our sister school in Cuba. Now, everyone was excited. Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden, who is an educator, were huge parts of this federal push to celebrate Cuba's education system. And then it comes time for the primary in 2020, and all of a sudden, Bernie's saying that's basically like, hey, Cuba's education system is great. And Bernie's like, yeah, their literacy rates are great. And they're like, oh, how fucking dare you, dude? Did you just say they're good? And it was just they're just like smearing him repeatedly for daring to suggest that their literacy rates improving was a good thing.
Yeah, loves Castro. No, that's one thing I will never forget, actually, covering that primary, about how after, I've mentioned this probably numerous times on the show, the listeners are probably sick of me talking about it, but I will never forget this because, like, after Nevada, after that historic victory, when everyone was so excited, you had this amazing coalition coming together. Bernie Sanders is winning the first couple of primaries. It looks like he's on his way to cruising to the nomination, and the entire media cycle for the next 2 weeks until South Carolina was not about that. It was about Bernie Sanders praising Fidel Castro's literacy programs in the 1980s. That's just so disgusting. And it was like, I was just completely stunned, just avoiding the story that was in everyone's face about what Bernie was accomplishing at that point. But like you're pointing out, going against what the Democratic Party was saying just a few years ago, with people like Obama and Biden himself making positive statements to the same effect, and that completely doesn't matter. And he got completely thrown under the bus by the Democratic Party. You had like Pete Buttigieg putting out ads saying like, well, if you don't want a Democratic nominee to praise dictators, then vote for me, and that kind of stuff. That was their that was the main storyline. That was how they used to kneecap Bernie's campaign. And it was actually very effective.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 2016 DNC platform, there is a line that specifically says, in Cuba, we will build on President Obama's historic opening and end the travel ban and embargo. We will also stand by the Cuban people and support their ability to decide their own future and enjoy the same human rights and freedoms, blah, blah, blah. The self-determination bullshit and like ultimately calling for regime change. But like they wanted to end the embargo, something Biden is currently not doing, doesn't support. And this is something that normalizing those relations and maintaining those normalized relations was something that they wanted. Now all of a sudden that's out the window.
I almost wonder if it kind of ties to the saber rattling that we do with China right now and kind of trying to maintain united front against just the idea of communism full stop.
Well, it's the new Red Scare. That's the thing.
Like,
I think we're much farther along into that than we were, I think, in 2015, 2016.
Right. And I think, as always, Cuba, this small island to the south of us just maintains as a victim of our foreign policy elsewhere and just kind of being a collateral damage of whatever larger communist entity we have to tilt windmills at, right?
This is so much of this, we saw this in the language from Democrats when the protests in Cuba were flaring up because they wanted to try to play both sides, and it was like, okay, well, you know what? Some of them specifically named that the embargo was bad. A few of them did, but even the Democrats who were trying to weigh in carefully would say things like, we have to fight authoritarianism around the world. We see a lot of that with China. That is such a rhetorical trap. We're not the country that needs to do that. We're not the people that need to do that. That is cover for hawks and moderates to get their way. And they are already employing the same playbook that they've been doing with China. They're calling on China to answer for its human rights abuses with the Uyghurs. And now they're doing the exact same thing. Just today, Senate Republicans are trying to do the exact same thing for human rights abuses in Cuba. Look at our fucking border. Look at the human rights abuses at our border. Why don't they care about that? Why don't they care about the surveillance of Muslims or people being killed by police here? Or people living in poverty or starving or not having health insurance? They don't care about human rights abuses. This is cover. So don't even engage on this fighting. I would encourage everyone to just pay no mind to this fighting authoritarianism around the world rhetorical device that progressives are falling for. It's such a trap. Just ignore it completely.
That's exactly what I said about the AOC tweet last week. Like, I don't understand whose game she's trying to play. Because
who's convinced by this?
Right. Yep. Like couching your ideas in this, like, well, and also anti-authoritarianism. It's like, you're best served by pushing against the embargo. Past that, I don't understand what audience you're trying to play to with this. Like, well, we need to also, like, fight for the democratic state of Cuba. It's like,
these
are you going to win over you're going to win over some conservative progressives that I don't know about?
Yeah, like these reactionary Cuban immigrants in Miami who were in fine form this week as being part of this like mostly astroturfed fake online operation, which was clearly also taking place, which is another avenue that I think was really startling this week. But yeah, I'm sure these folks, they're going to be super convinced by someone like AOC being like, by the way, we need to end the embargo, but yes, authoritarian, and we need to condemn the president, we need to condemn Cuba's terrible authoritarianism and their human rights crimes. None of these people are convinced. Like, these people are completely in fine form this week. I mean, they're all calling for like bombing campaigns and military interventions because Fidel like took away their grandfather's plantation and stuff. I don't think they're not convinced by this kind of equivocation.
Finally, they've said the thing that I need to hear in order to
exactly.
flip
now
sides.
I love the Democratic Party now. But it's amazing. I mean, it's not just this week, but you realize that this is the exact crowd that I feel like the Democrats feel the need to like appeal to always, and they can't ever go too left because then we're going to turn off these communities in Florida, and we need to win Florida. That was the whole thing with the election, right? Oh, we can't nominate Bernie because he said nice things about Castro, and we're going to lose Florida. And as I recall, Biden, since he wasn't that, he's been kind of a staunch anti-communist his whole career. So of course he just waltzed to an easy victory in Florida. I don't want to look up the exact, I don't recall exactly what happened. I'm not going to look it up. That's the thing is like they're not winning over these communities anytime soon, but they still feel the need to ensure that they appeal first and foremost to these like very reactionary right-wing immigrant groups from Cuba in this vain effort to eventually win Florida in an election, which doesn't seem like it's ever going to materialize anytime soon. And like you're pointing out, it's just you're not convincing anyone. All you're doing is diluting your very important message about ending the blockade. And when you looked at that statement by
thing
AOC,
that will best serve these groups, which will be ending the blockade. Instead, you're like, well, all right, well, what if I satisfy a couple of reactionaries while I'm at it as well?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's like you look at that statement, and if you had taken away her initial attempt to equivocate and condemn Cuba, it would have been a great statement. She literally she undercuts her own messaging when it comes to this kind of thing, saying things like, it's this embargo, it's cruel, and the cruelty is the point. But at the same time, we've got to condemn Cuba's government. But like, you're literally admitting that it's your own government that's causing the problem. So instead of trying to appeal to these conservative types who are terrified of the idea of socialism, it would be nice to have these kind of left-leaning social democrat members of the Democratic Party just focus on the thing that they control, which is the fact that their government is part of this disastrous embargo that's been a very cruel method of ensuring that Cubans' lives are as difficult as possible and their economy struggles as much as possible.
Yeah, I'd like to Noah Colin's tweet on this type of language. People were saying, like, I think Chris Murphy said, what if the suffering of the Cuban people is caused by both a cruel, backwards dictatorial regime and really bad U.S. policy? It could be both, right? Yeah. And Noah Colin goes, what if the ship's captain was really bad at steering, but also we've been shooting missiles at the ship for 60 years? It could be both, right? And that's like perfect encapsulation of this dynamic. And also, shout out to Noah, whose podcast Blowback Season 2 covers
Cuba,
it's been the revolution. And
I was talking about that. Like that came to Spotify like 3 days after the Cuba situation started to emerge, and I was like, I imagine Noah and Brendan both are just eyes agape at how many people are kind of tuning into it. Like, wait, what's going on? What did we do to Cuba?
It is incredibly well done, too, well produced. That everyone should check that. If you want a historical grounding in the United States relationship to Cuba and how the revolutionary war was fought and won, and also that the changes that the Castro government made in these early days of the revolution. Super, super fascinating. So I don't know where that's going to go next, though. It seems like the organic part of the protests have kind of died down. We should take some time to talk about also, I think, I mentioned it a couple minutes ago, but the way that this was coupled with a very coordinated effort to have this kind of social media campaign going along with it. And it felt right. It did not feel like something that came up organically. There's been articles that have come out even a couple years ago about the United States efforts to like influence politics in Cuba through social media and through these bot accounts. And I think we all saw that. It was very kind of eerie, actually, the way it happened. As soon as this story kind of hits the mainstream, it was coupled with this very, very intense online push to push this SOS Cuba hashtag and push these kind of stories. And that's absolutely something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of when it comes to these kinds of color revolutions moving forward.
Yeah, I saw a lot of I don't know. I don't want to get too into the weeds on AstroTurf digital stuff, but it's definitely happening. Everyone is doing it. It's not coming from one specific country. It's not coming from one specific region. We certainly do it around the world and have been doing it around the world in different mediums and forms for decades.
I guess that's why it's kind of funny, because you've seen it become such a big story, like after the 2016 election, of Russia and other countries doing this exact kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like the war comes home.
As usual, America is the one doing it just as much or even more as anyone else.
Yeah, it's just funny to see people with like accounts created in like July 2021, like firing off tweets about how they love the embargo and how it protects Cuba's economy.
Right.
Yeah.
Shit.
I made an account just to talk about my grandfather that had a small dairy farm in 1958, and then all of a sudden, the darndest
thing happened. He was a humble police officer serving his community under the Batista regime.
He was just a Batistiano from way back, and honestly,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I think everyone should take away, though, is that when they see this kind of thing come up, if you're in America, if you're in the West, we can point out all the ways that Cuba is experiencing legitimate issues. But the thing that we can control is the embargo and the sanctions. I mean, and frankly, I have people saying things to me like, actually, the embargo doesn't even affect the economy and it basically does nothing. So it's like, well, if that's the case, you can't really describe what's happening in Cuba currently as a failure of socialism because you have the most powerful country and the most powerful economy putting their thumb on the scale to ensure that things don't work. So if you really want to own the Cuban communists and show that socialism doesn't work, well, you can own them by removing the embargo.
Get rid of that do nothing embargo.
Yeah, we'll all see then that it makes no difference, then everything will continue to fail. But so if people believe that they want to help Cuba, or if they want to help Cubans like improve their material conditions, that's how we can do it, is by lifting the embargo. And we don't need to get too much further into the weeds than that. I mean, that's the thing we can control. That's what the thing we should be advocating for.
Totally.
You see, guys vaxxed? Heard about the Delta variant?
I'm all about it.
What do you think about that?
I think it's solid. Honestly, I'm excited for there, to just be one for every day of the week. Just a variant that you can throw on Monday, and then you get a different one on Tuesday.
Yeah, I saw kind of things seeming like they were returning back to normal. You see, sports stadiums start to fill up again. People are going out, and I was like, I think we need another couple of years of the isolation and the lockdowns and the masks. I want more of that. So that's why I'm encouraged by.
Well, it was
these variants.
It was the Bucks game last night, right? 36,000 people, just packed to the gills.
Yeah, did you see the crowd outside too? It was enormous.
Yeah. Their vaccination rate is 51%.
Cool.
Yeah. So
one thing that I do find kind of interesting, though, is that, obviously over the last 6 months, partially because Joe Biden is the one, in charge of the government right now, it's become, because everything has to be spun into this culture war thing. So now you can't just have like people saying, oh yeah, we're going to go get vaccinated so we can fix this pandemic. Whether it's climate change, whether it's this, everything has to turn into this like culture war battle. And we've seen the same thing happen with the vaccine. And it's become very popular on right-wing media to raise doubts about the vaccine, to encourage people not to get it, to, spread division when it comes to this, which is leading to this exact problem of not enough people getting the vaccine, which leads to more variants, which leads to more pandemic, more lockdowns, etc.
Yeah.
And one thing that is kind of interesting that happened over the last week or so is you now see right-wing media, as like Fox News in particular, who have played a large role in spreading this kind of misinformation and making people doubt the idea of getting the vaccine. A number of media figures and American conservative political figures have started to really push people to get the vaccine, which has been kind of interesting to see. And I hope this is going to have an actual impact and that people are going to start listening to these folks. What did you make of that, though? And what do you think is behind this shift that we've seen in the media and in politics? I saw Ron DeSantis as well push, talking about people getting the vaccine today. What do you think is behind this?
Well, I mean, you see some people talking about the idea that the Dow dropped a couple 100 points on Monday on some of the news that we're seeing a rise in COVID numbers that we haven't seen since April. So obviously, I think there's a lot of hesitancy. Then that same evening, you see, not just again like the lower level Fox News anchors, but even Hannity talking about vaccine responsibility and how people need to go out and not treat it like it's just some flu or something like that. So I think they might be rightly worried that if we don't kind of correct course, we're absolutely on the way to another economic downturn that is solely now going to be placed on the conservatives because their entire messaging up until now has been, well, who knows what these... I mean, you've had Tucker Carlson literally saying, hey, dozens of people might be dying from vaccines by the day. Who knows? So, I think they're trying to escape that messaging at this point because there's nowhere to kind of turn now if we have another dip in COVID. I mean, there's already ICUs in places like I believe Sacramento is starting to get full again. That's going to spell I think a pretty bad portent for a lot of conservatives that have taken a hard line on the anti-vax.
the Dow dropping 700 points on Monday, which was the largest drop and worst market day of the year, I think was a pretty big moment for Republicans, because ultimately, and I mean Congress at large, but especially Republicans, ultimately represent the interests of the corporate state and capital in this country, and that hit home. That hit hard for a lot of companies, and they saw if this continues, this was kind of a wake up call. If this continues, profits are going to get hurt, revenues are going to get hurt, dividends are going to get hurt. All this kind of stuff. They don't give a shit if anyone's getting sick or dying, if it's your grandma or you or workers around the country, but their donors, if it impacts their donors' wallets and they're responsible, then they're on the hook. That's the moment where it finally got serious for them. And the very next day, Steve Scalise, who's a top Republican in Congress, said, "Oh yeah, I'm getting vaccinated. It's serious. Everyone needs to do it, and it's because of the Delta variant." Like specifically, not mincing words, naming it. And
right.
That was it. So we're probably going to see a lot more of that. Hopefully it can mitigate what I think now is probably an inevitable because of the way and how fast this spreads. It's just too late to just squash it. It's already here. It's now in DC. It's what was, I think, infecting people on the Capitol and in the White House.
I mean, we were looking at 3% of COVID cases were Delta variant in April. Now we're, approaching upwards of 35%, I believe.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a rapidly increasing, infection rate of this new variant amongst the scores of unvaccinated we have here. It's immensely worrying.
Yeah. I really fear if this continues to fester and people don't get vaccinated, or because of the damage done by Republicans and their champions in the media trying to stigmatize vaccines or suggest that you don't need it or it's a matter of individual liberty or whatever, that we see new variants emerge. So this is bad. It could get worse. Again, the solution is getting vaccinated, but is it too late? I mean, is the genie already out of the bottle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that hopeful note is as good a place to leave it as any. It's just a typical Insurgents episode, which we can all leave feeling hopeful about the future of America, humanity. I feel good. I know you guys do as well.
Oh,
Lucy, do you have anything positive you want to leave us with? Do you have a positive news story for us? Let's end on a positive note.
Lucy's really into boycotting Ben and Jerry's, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh man, you can't stop me from not. Well, I actually, it's funny. I did just make my own ice cream, and that's because of Ben and Jerry's, obviously. It's great. Somebody got me an ice cream maker, and I made my first peanut butter and blackberry jelly oat milk ice cream.
Let's go.
That sounds very good.
Are you vegan?
No. But my partner's lactose intolerant, so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and being a chef, I get to make a lot of cool stuff, just kind of outside the norm. So.
That sounds very good.
Yeah. So there you go. There's a feel good thing. Ice cream's pretty solid.
Very cool. Yes.
Well, Lucid, thanks so much for joining the show. It was great to have you on to break this stuff down. Yeah. Why don't you just let everyone know where they can find you on Twitch and anything else you want to plug before we say goodbye?
Yeah. So I'm twitch.tv/LucidFoxx or just LucidFoxx.com. Either one will take you to where I do my thing Monday through Friday, 5 days a week in the mornings.
And again, much better than Rob's. Just want to hammer that point home.
I mean,
I do have to say, on a serious note, obviously Jordan's joking about the ribbing me and stuff. Mm-hmm. I do have to note, though, I've been at this Twitch thing for like 9 months, and I do really appreciate LucidFoxx, that you've helped me out a ton in terms of helping to find an audience on Twitch with the raids and stuff. So I really do appreciate it. I got to thank you for the support you've shown.
Hell yeah.
Jordan usually just kind of makes fun of me and joins the chat sometimes and tries to organize the chat to do an uprising against me. So
sure.
It's called organizing. It's called organizing everywhere, sweaty.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot, Lucid. It was great to talk to you. We'll talk to you soon, man. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Insurgents. Please remember to subscribe over at theinsurgents.substack.com. Find the podcast on all your favorite podcast apps, and please remember to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's very helpful, and we appreciate it a lot. But please, again, don't mention Ken Klippenstein in the review. He is banned from the show. It's a lifetime ban, so please do not mention him in the review. And we'll be back later this week with more of the content that you know and love. Goodbye.